Hey guys, thanks for coming to the channel today. And today I wanted to breach the topic of forward-facing sonar or live scope. And I wanted to talk about a few different things. Why you should have it, why you shouldn't have it, when to use it, when not to use it, should it be used in professional tournaments, should it not be used in professional tournaments, what I have, what I use it for, and where I think it's going in the future. So let's just get started right away. I purchased a live scope unit with the transducer about 2 years ago. Now, although I've fished all over the country, fished opens for a couple years, fished a lot of federation, divisionals, national championships, would have had the opportunity to use live scope in good situations in many of those tournaments, but I didn't have. But I purchased it. And what I have found, at least for me, where I fish in a lot of tidal river situations, you're usually not going to be able to see the bass. Now, there's some situations, low flow areas, where you can see the bass. Swimming around in grass, possibly things like that. So for a tidal river situation, it's very limited in being able to actually see the bass and pinpoint the bass. And what I find is a lot of times in these tidal rivers, the fish tend to gang up. All of the fish tend to gang up in small areas. So you could have 100 fish on your screen for your forward-facing sonar and none of them be bass. Stripers, catfish, gar, white perch, yellow perch, bluegill, everything that swims in these rivers, which is considerable. And because of the current, they tend to gang up in small areas, and a lot of times you can't see those fish. Now that lets you know that that's a lively area and may also hold bass, and then you would generally use your live scope in a river situation like that, a currented river situation, to figure out where the life areas are and to pinpoint structure. And that's what I use it a lot for. I look around, I go, okay, there's a little stump, there's a little blob, there's the edge of the drop off where the fish are holding, that type of thing, but you're still kind of making random cast. So for river situations, for grass situations, thicker grass situations, Florida lakes, most Florida lakes anyhow, not all Florida lakes, I don't think that live scope is a great tool. It will help you for sure. Every little tool that you can have will help, but it's not a game-changing tool most of the time. Again, there's situations where it could be a game-changing tool. So if you're going to purchase a forward-facing sonar unit, Garmin generally gets the best reviews, but they all work. So I would say that the most important feature to have with a forward-facing sonar unit would be the size of the screen. Now I have a 93 SV, which is a 9-inch screen. If I had it to do over again, I would have bought the 12-inch screen, just because the bigger screen is going to allow you to see a little bit better than with the smaller screen. Give you a little bit more, detail basically of what you're looking at compared to the smaller screen. If you're a bass fisherman and you're using, or you want to use forward-facing sonar, I think you're wasting your money if you go anything below a 9-inch screen. They make 7, 6, and 5-inch screens, but that's probably like an ice fishing deal. I would not waste my money on that small of a screen. So the biggest thing I would say would be to use the 12-inch screen if you're going to use it. Now, I also have mine set up for perspective mode. So I have the little bracket that can switch the transducer from forward facing or down imaging to perspective mode. It rotates to the side and you look out almost like the 360 would do, except it only sees, like 170 degrees, not quite halfway to each side, which is good. And I noticed a lot of the pros are using both the perspective mode transducer for one unit and then another unit that has the forward facing on it, because the perspective mode doesn't allow you to see how deep the fish are in the water column. While you can see them moving around And you can say, man, they're higher up or lower down depending on how far their shadow is away from them. It's a guessing game. And then that, it doesn't, it's hard to file a fish on perspective mode. So for me, the perspective mode I use mostly on shallower grass type lakes, grass rivers, shallow bays in the spawning season when you're looking for maybe a log or something that you can't see with your eyes, that you wouldn't be able to pick up that log on regular forward facing sonar, but you can see it on perspective mode. So you can switch back and forth depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what time of year it is, how deep you're fishing. And forward facing mode is probably good down to about 5 or 6 feet deep. Once you get shallower than that, you kind of lose your ability to see any distance at all out in front of the boat. And then you would definitely just want to switch it to perspective mode at that point in time if you're fishing that shallow. 6, 7, 8 feet, you can see, 50, 60 feet out in front of the boat pretty decently. But there's too much interference because of it bouncing off the bottom, past that. So why is forward-facing sonar so effective, especially for the younger guys? This Trey McKinney just won the Bass Elite Series on Lake Fork, and several, of the very young guys who normally wouldn't compete would have to take their lumps for years before they'd be competitive in the upper echelons of bass fishing are winning. And, it's not because they have forward-facing sonar alone, because all the pros pretty much have forward-facing sonar, the ones who want it anyhow. John Cox doesn't have any, and some of the other pros may have one unit, or Bill Lowen, it just doesn't depend on it. And, I'll explain it like this. I started fishing when I was between 5 and 10 years old. I started bass fishing when I was about 10 years old. Grew up on a little pond, had a little boat, learned to bass fish the normal way. Started our own club when I was in my teens. They got another bigger club later on, and have been fishing my whole life, and I'm 62. So, I've been fishing over 50 years, 55 years or so. And 53 of those years, every time I went fishing, everything that I perceived in bass fishing was done with my eyes, looking at the water, looking at the water temperature, looking at the color of the water, looking for bird activity, looking for fish surfacing, all these different things. Clues, what am I seeing? Is grass coming up over here? Is it coming up over there? Are the lily pads up yet? Is there a tree in the water over here? And so 50 years of training myself to fish like that visually, and then, you check your depth finder to depth, see fish activity. Do I have fish in this area? Do I have bait in this area? And then it becomes still a random cast thing, right? So you're just random casting based on the clues that you have, trying to catch a fish, but every cast is still random. And see, with these younger kids, they've learned to go all in on forward-facing sonar. And guess what they never do? They never make a random cast. All their casts are either to a piece of structure that you can't see, or to a fish, or what they think is a fish in the water. Now, they may miss, of course, but every cast that they make is a highly educated, pinpointed cast to where a fish is. And if you go out there throughout the day and every cast that you make gives you an opportunity to catch a fish, guess what you're going to do? You're going to catch more fish than somebody who's 90% of the time probably throwing their lure to something where there's not even a fish there that's even capable of eating your bait. So they may make more casts because they're not waiting in between, to see something's there, but they're wasting so many casts, 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 and the efficiency level is just not comparable. So what I'm figuring here is you can't put your toe in the water and say I went swimming. You understand? And that's what us fishermen are doing. We're dabbling with forward-facing sonar because we have to kind of rewire our brain again to, first of all, accept this technology, which is hard to do for a lot of us. But it's not going away, folks. They may limit it, but it's not going away. So we have to rewire our brain. You know, it's kind of like, I don't want to give necessarily a religious analogy, but it's kind of like this in a lot of different religions, Christianity and other religions. People take on doctrines or belief systems based on what they've been taught and what they've accepted as truth. Sometimes it's not truth at all. Sometimes it is. So in order to break from that, you know, like if you're in a cult or something like that, you almost become a codependent to the person who's persecuting you. So my point is, we have this codependent mindset that's been developed over 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years of how we catch fish. And you can still catch them like that. But if you want to compete on the highest levels or even lower levels, even clubs now, you're probably going to have to adopt this technology in order to get ahead. And you can't stick your toe in the water. You can't go out there during the day and spend 90% of your time doing what you used to do, and then 10% of the time, oh yeah, let me look down my live scope and see what's going on. Oh yeah, there's a few fish fishing around, make a cast to them. Oh, that didn't work, let me go back to the bank again. And see, that's what's happening. That's why, you know, Greg Hackney's going to struggle this year accepting shallow fisheries, and Swindle's going to struggle, and so many of these guys who have done it the old school way, even if they start today, saying, I'm committing to live scope, they're 3 or 4 years behind these young kids who've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, and they've committed to it. And, you know, let's talk about finding fish. See, in the past, it was you could ride over an area with your depth finder and look and see if there was fish or fish activity in the area, and then you would random cast around and try to catch them. And, you know, what LiveScope has done is it opened up the whole lake. And it's opened up areas of the lake where you just couldn't target the fish before. You know, you just couldn't target these fish out in deep water around the tops of timber. It became a random thing, and it's no longer a random thing. So, you know now, with LiveScope, forward-facing sonar, you know now if you're fishing for fish or not fishing for fish. So like even when you're practicing for a tournament, if you go through an area and it's a lake, you know, and the water's relatively clear, not a muddy place or a river, you know, or Florida lake, and you go through an area and you scan around with your LiveScope and there's nothing there, it looks good, where normally with your eyes, your bank fisherman and whatnot, you go, man, I'm fishing this. And you go through there and you see no bait and you see no fish swimming around, then you instantly know they're not here. And, you know, that was the question that we had for years. On the days where we didn't catch them, the question was, were they there and they weren't biting, or were they not there? So now that question is doesn't have to be asked anymore. Are they there? No. No, they're not here, or they're plastered to the bottom. And if they're plastered to the bottom, I can't pinpoint them with LiveScope, so I'm going to go somewhere where I can see them and fish for them. So this is what's happening with LiveScope. So this is why the young kids are exceeding the old guys, because they're stuck. The young kids aren't stuck. The young kids are completely devoted, committed to fishing that way, because of them it just makes sense. Why would I just go fish down the bank guessing and hoping to catch a fish when I can do this and I know I'm throwing at one? So it's really as simple as that. So if you want to succeed in the long run with fishing, you're going to have to adopt this technology, or fish tournament circuits and scenes that don't have it, and they're coming up. You know, there's several of those that have already started. No electronics tournament, you know, fishing deals, and that's fine. You know, if you want to fish them, that's fine. If you want to fish the live scope, that's fine. You know, I'm not arguing one way or another. I'm just laying this out for you so you understand what's going on and how to adapt to it, what units to use probably, and those types of things. So what's the future of forward-facing sonar? Well, the future is, it's not going anywhere. Now, I believe personally, and it may or may not happen, but I believe personally that because of the outcry, this is not fishing, this is more like hunting, we can't watch this, and because of the television audiences on a lot of these, you know, professional fishing shows, that these organizations will probably limit forward-facing sonar to some degree. Maybe one unit, can't have 2 or 3 units up front, 2 or 3 units in the back, 1 unit in front, 1 unit in the back, plus maybe a GPS if they need it, you know, along with it. And they'll probably limit the screen size. They'll probably do something like that. But another way they could tackle it would be to put 50% of their tournaments on shallow fisheries where it's not going to play, and 50% of their tournaments on bodies of water where it will play. That would be a good compromise for the viewing audience. So at least you can see some, you know, some frog fishing and some swim jigging and square billing and all that type of stuff, buzz bait fishing, the whole deal. So that would be a good compromise. So it's not going anywhere. You'll either adopt it or you won't. And you know, that's it's your freedom to do whatever you want to do, whatever you don't want to do. It's a free country. For me, I adopt it. I'm not going to get ridiculous with it. You know, we watched this video, last week? A lot of you probably have watched this video with Zal Dangerous going around and asking the pros about all their sonar setups. And you know, a couple of them claim to have $50,000 worth of electronics on their boat. Now that's just ridiculous. You know, that's just ridiculous. I think just like in NASCAR or golf or any of these other sports or any other sport on the planet, you have to even the playing field, right? And I don't care if somebody doesn't want it. If they don't want it, they don't want it. That's fine. But you have to even the playing field for the good of the sport. And if you have to limit the ridiculousness of all these units, really, you really do. They're not, how are they handicapped if they have a live sight on their boat that can see everything around them versus having 2 or 3 of them with 3 transducers on the front? I mean, just pick one, pick forward-facing sonar, pick 360. Can't have both. Not in a tournament situation. Whatever you do in your life, and buy whatever you want, use whatever you want. But for the good of the sport, I think they need to limit it and change the format to no more than half of the tournaments on live site type tournaments and no more than half of the tournaments on shallow fisheries. And guess what? You just even the playing field then, right? So that's what they should do. You know, NASCAR, you can't have a bigger engine than somebody else. You can't have better tires than somebody else. You can't have more wind resistance than less wind resistance than somebody else because you have a special design. You know, everything has to fit in the same criteria. You got to make the most out of what you have, which everybody else can also have the same thing. So that's my 2.5 cents on that whole live site thing. Thanks for watching and have a blessed day.